Now that the Xbox Series X and S are out there in the wild, albeit in short supply, games at 60 frames a second, either via enhanced next-gen patches or backwards compatibility, is one huge area in which many console gamers, including myself, have been waiting for. Sure, they did exist on last gen systems of course, especially with the One X hitting the market, but this new console generation will really be the first time where games running at those high frame rates of 60 and 120 begin to be commonplace and forever washing our eyeballs of what will surely become the 30 frame slideshows of yesteryear. But these also stand out as they're also pushing higher resolutions and all better quality assets and other visual details that go beyond even the most powerful systems of last gen. But of course, please give the video a thumbs up, share it around on different platforms, subscribe and leave a comment down below about which games are getting the 60 frames per second treatment that you've always wanted. Check the description for a link to the Discord to talk about everything Xbox and gaming, but of course, with that, let's get stuck in. Beginning at number 10, we have Dirt 5, and this one has the Xbox Series X and S enhanced treatment, and now it runs a lot smoother and looks much cleaner on the Series X and S. And this is a racing game for those who aren't wanting anything too sim-like, so this is very easy to just pick up and play as it's on the arcadey side of races. It does lack the polish of something like a Forza Horizon 4 in terms of its presentation, and it doesn't take first place in terms of its visuals, even though they do look to have had an upgrade since it first released. But you will get a solid racing game that's been enhanced for the new crop of consoles, but most importantly, it runs silky smooth at 60 or even 120 if you opt for that. And the racing genre is similar to shooters or fighting games, where a smooth and consistent frame rate is of the utmost importance. There is a good amount of variety when it comes to the different stages and the parts of the world in which you travel to, with standouts for me being those stages which have you racing on ice. But overall, Dirt 5 isn't the showcase for the power of the Xbox Series X, but it can look quite great at times, and the rock solid frame rate is the standout. Coming in at number 9, we have the latest Yakuza game, and it's Like a Dragon, and this is an example of where a higher frame rate isn't paramount with how much you'll enjoy the series, as it's really the characters and story which is the focus here, even more than the action. But there's no doubt that playing this game and series at double the frame rate of last gen just gives such a smoother performance boost, which just makes it more enjoyable. Whether you're beating up the bunch of annoying thugs which always seem to be in your way when you just want to get to your objective, or just running around the city checking out the sights, side quests and activities, it runs fantastically on the Series X, and the game does look good overall. But again, this isn't pushing the hardware too much at all, and this series isn't known for cutting edge graphics, nor simply being optimized that well. But even with those less than ideal traits, it's a fantastic game and series. And now it's even more enjoyable to play due to the smoother frame rate, even if it's not a necessity due to the slower turn-based combat introduced in this release. For number 8, we have The Evil Within 2 from Bethesda, and this is for anyone who is looking for yet another horror game that blends the scares with action. And this one succeeds pretty well where others seem to fail miserably at times, and I pretty much mention this when I talk about horror games. They need tension and atmosphere to succeed, and The Evil Within 2 does mostly well with this, but the premise and story itself is quite intriguing for you to keep playing. Plus there are some good enemy and monster designs too, and the game keeps up the good pace, which is good to see. But this also simply runs much better now at 60 frames a second, which makes the gameplay and the cutscenes so much more smooth compared to the base Xbox One and even the One X, with the Series X being able to stick much closer to that 60 frames a second mark, plus do it more often, and it makes playing the game just that much more enjoyable. Seeing stutters, especially in a game such as this, where the mood and atmosphere is so important, the hiccups in the frame rate can kill the experience or moments within it. But now it happens far less than any system from last gen. It's a very good game to check out if you like some scares or horror. Up at number 7 is Steep, which sets itself apart from most anything else out there for gamers to enjoy, and also anything else on this list. And this kind of came and went without much fanfare, but it really is a great game for those who are after something like this, or for those fans of 1080 snowboarding or the SSX series from back in the day, even though this adds a lot more in terms of different sports, plus it doesn't really have the over-the-top nature of SSX. But firstly, this game looks really good overall, from the snow itself and how your character will make their way through it, to the mountains in the background and the riders, to how your clothing will flap violently in the wind, especially when you're snowboarding down a steep slope. And snowboarding is just one area you can invest some time in, with others being skiing, gliding, or using a wingsuit for example. But what's great about Steep is that you can switch to any of them at any time, bring up the map and go straight to an event. There's no need to go back to the menu at all, and now the game runs at a flawless 60 frames a second, so it looks great and has the performance to back it up, plus HDR to go along with it. Great fun to be had here. Next up at number 6, we have the long-running Final Fantasy series, and in particular, Final Fantasy 15. I've never been the largest Final Fantasy fan, even though I really enjoyed the Final Fantasy VII Remake a lot, but when initially playing this game on the Xbox One X, it had several graphical modes, but none that I was really happy with, as each seemed to sacrifice something, and it really still does now. The choices were to favour resolution or performance, and if you favoured the latter, then that would drop the image down to 1080p and increase the frame rate, but it still fluctuated a lot and really never hit that 60 frame mark that we want. So it always felt like the game was struggling. Well, the good news for the Xbox Series X is that it easily runs the game at 60, and it's all the better for it, no matter what is happening on screen. It's also smooth and really just made me want to keep playing. And this is the performance that was always needed. It's just unfortunate that it still only runs at 1080p, so the image quality isn't fantastic, even if the game still does look good. Hopefully it receives a patch at some point, so I can't see how the Xbox Series X would struggle all that much with keeping the frame rate at 60 and ramping the resolution all the way up to 4K or close to it. And at number 5 we have Skyrim, and it can't be overstated just how much better this game is to play at 60 frames, and this console generation with the Xbox Series X is really the first time console gamers will be able to experience expansive open environments at such high performance. Now of course this game is 10 years old, so it isn't a huge accomplishment for the Series X to be able to do it, but because the game is just so great and influential, it still deserves to be played and revisited with the mod that enables it to run far better than last gen. As mentioned in another video, you will see the footage here maybe stutter or drop some frames, as the gameplay probably has around 10 to 12 mods installed, with most of those being related to making the graphics better than the vanilla release. More dense foliage, more trees, better textures, but if you stripped away these, then expect the game to consistently run at that 60 frames a second, and it's glorious. But I just can't help installing the other mods as well, and hope many more games have this feature moving forward. If you haven't played the game for a while or just want to take advantage of the Series X some more, then check this one out. It runs great, plus it's just a better version of what we already had. For number 4 we have the excellent Wolfenstein 2, the new Colossus, and if you like the first game, then you should no doubt enjoy this one too. And even though it's been years since I played the first one, with Wolfenstein the New Order, I preferred its sequel, and that feeling started from the beginning of the game as you're mowing down Nazis as you're in a wheelchair, but it's also the performances of the enemies in the cutscenes which sells the time period and the story. And it's great, and there really is no shortage of gunfights in this game, plus it's more old school in the way Doom is, where your character will carry enough firepower for a small army and manages to carry it all at once. This game already looked fantastic, but it did have an erratic frame rate last gen, especially on the base machines. It performed better on the One X, but it still had those dips which really take away from the experience, especially in shooters, even if it did push to 4K with its dynamic resolution. But now, that high resolution sticks around most of the time, and the frame rate keeps pretty rock solid as well, so you can just admire the graphics, setting, and the gunfights instead of trying to fight the performance, and it's a great game. Up at number 3, it's Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and if you've watched some other videos of mine where I've shown it off, I'm not the largest fan of the game when it comes to its characters and story, and the game can look a little unimpressive at times, but I can't doubt that when it looks good, it looks gorgeous, and when you couple that with the performance mode at 60 frames, then it really is highly impressive, and just the beginning of what gamers can expect this gen, with huge, beautiful open worlds and high frame rates. There really has only been maybe a couple of incidents where the frame rate dipped slightly for myself, but nothing that was too jarring or harsh. But when you jump off your longboat, run onto land to an enemy encampment with your allies, and there's a large battle happening with the clank of swords hitting and blood spurting as the sun beams down on everything, the colourful flowers and lush grass all being shown off, then it's so impressive, and the high frame rate just lets the action rarely skip a beat, and you wonder just how you'll be able to go back and enjoy a 30 frames a second game. If you really wanted to, you could choose the resolution mode, but once I experienced the performance mode, I couldn't go back. Next at number 2 we have Forza Horizon 4, the absolutely fantastic racing game from the incredibly talented Playground Games, and this already looked and performed really well on last gen systems, especially on the One X, where we could play at 4K 30 or opt to drop the resolution to 1080p and have the game run at 60. Both were great for what they offered, but now we get the best of both worlds on Series X with it running at 4K 60. Now many games can run at 4K 60 should the developers want them to. It's all about compromise with what the hardware is being used for, but when playing this on Series X, it almost feels like there is so much power there that there is little to no compromise with the world and landscapes on showing just how incredible looking the car models and the environment is, and it's some of the best around. Then we pile on the fantastic lighting, weather effects, great draw distances, better quality shadows and reflections, plus throw in multiple cars on screen at once and it looks incredible and now runs like never before on a console. Playing Forza Horizon 4 just makes me think what the devs will accomplish when they've had more time with the Series X and even the Series S hardware, if they could get a game looking this damn good on last gen systems. And now that we have a much higher resolution and it runs so silky smooth, then this game is easily one of the best racing games out there. It's a must play. And for number 1, there is Gears 5 from another really great studio, in that of the Coalition. And just like Playground Games, they seem to really know their way around Xbox hardware, as Gears 5, even on the base Xbox One, just looked so good. But what makes Gears 5 even more impressive is that it received an Xbox One X enhancement, which enabled all game modes, including the campaign, to run at 60 frames, whilst the Gears 4 Xbox One X patch only allowed the campaign to run at 30. Now Gears 5 does drop the resolution down from a native 4K in order to keep the frame rate nice and high, and there weren't any moments on the One X, and definitely not the Series X, where I noticed any hit to performance, plus the game is just a stunner to look at. What I consider to be one of the best looking games out there, made even better on Series X, with higher quality assets, shadows and lighting for example, but still retaining that 60 frames a second. Gears 5 is just a joy to play and is right up the top of games to play on the Series X, not only if you're wanting some really great 60 frames a second performance, but this is an example of a game that you throw on in order to impress other people and to show them what this new console can do. Amazing work from the Coalition. So there's some more games that run at 60 frames a second, and when you experience these, if you happen to go back to last gen systems, especially if you're coming from the base Xbox One, you'll really tell the difference in just what can be achieved on these new consoles. But please let me know down below which games are your favourite and which ones did you play last gen and have revisited on the Series X. Please give the video a thumbs up, share it, subscribe and join the Discord with the link down below to talk about, well, anything in gaming. And with that, I'll catch you on the next video.